Jainara dear students, I hope you all are fine. Stay home, stay safe, and always follow the rules of SMS. Wear mask, apply soap and sanitizer, and whenever you are out in the public, maintain social distancing. So dear students, now let us continue on with the interesting topic once again. So today we'll start a chapter, Footprints Without Feet, and this is from our book, supplementary book, and the name of the supplementary book is also Footprints Without Feet. This chapter is written by H.G. Wells. So, before knowing the chapter, we need to know about the author. The H.G. Wells, Herbert George Wells, was born on September 21st, 1866, and he died on 13th August 1946. H.G. Wells, he was an English writer. He was prolific in many novels. He wrote many novels, short stories, and social commentary. His satires, they are also very famous. His biography, autobiography, and even 2 books on recreational war games. He is very well remembered for his science fiction novels and is often called the father of science fiction. Now, we need to know about the characters which are involved in this chapter, Footprints Without Feet. In the whole chapter, we'll be meeting with basically main 3 characters. The first one is Griffin. Griffin is the protagonist of this story. He is the eccentric scientist who by his experiments makes himself invisible. And later on, we'll come to know that he does not even hesitate to resort to criminal activities. And till end of this chapter, he remained a mystery. The second character is of Mrs. Halls. Mrs. Halls, she is a resolute lady, but she is very superstitious. Mrs. Halls, she is the owner of the inn at Iping. Iping is a village where Griffin stays. The third character is of Mr. Jaffers. Mr. Jaffers is a policeman. He is a dutiful policeman. In the later part, we'll come to know that he was being called by the village people to arrest the protagonist of this story, Griffin, but he fails to arrest that invisible scientist. Now comes about the story. So dear students, this story is about a scientist whose name is Griffin. He had been discovering ways which could make a man invisible, and finally he swallows that drug and makes himself invisible. But he was being first noticed by 2 boys in the staircase of a house where they could just see his footsteps, and then they started following those footsteps. At first, when he was invisible, he felt that he would do whatever he wished, but as he was living in London, so after being invisible, he cannot move around in London without clothes, as the season when he became invisible was of winter. So he used to feel cold, and to cover himself, he found out different ways. He unboxes many things. And finally, when he moves to Iping, then we come to know that after living there for some time, how he runs out of money and then he resorts to stealing. After that, he was being tried to get arrested, but how he escaped. This is all what we'll be studying in this chapter. Now see, this is the first part of the chapter. In this chapter, we come to know that two boys, they suddenly noticed a few muddy imprints of bare foot. They wondered that what was a barefoot man doing on the steps of a house, and that also in the middle of London. They also started thinking that where was the man, as he was nowhere to be seen. They suddenly then saw another footmark. The man was still not visible. They started following the footprints, and they followed the footprints until the footprints became invisible. So now we come to know that they had been following a scientist who had discovered how to make the human body transparent or invisible. It was Griffins, the scientist, who had been working for a long time to see how to make the human body invisible. Suddenly one day, he consumed that drug which made his body invisible. Though it could be felt, he was invisible, but he could be felt by other people also. Griffin, he was a lawless person, as he had once burned down the house of his landlord, who was trying to throw him out of the house. And then, as he wanted to be invisible, he had to remove all his clothes, and then he roamed all around the town without clothes and without money. His presence was felt after he stepped in some mud, and his footprints could be seen as he walked. But he easily escaped the boys who had followed him. But still, many more adventures were waiting for him. He had chosen a very bad time to wander in London, as it was a winter season going on and the air was very cold. So he decided to stay inside a store for warmth. As he went inside the store and waited for everybody to go. When the doors of the store they were shut and nobody was left inside, then it was all his store. Then he got food for himself to eat and he wore new clothes. He was very happy because he ate the food and wore new clothes without paying for it. He became visible again as he wore shoes, overcoat, and a hat. After that, he found some cold meat and coffee in the kitchen and he ate them also. After eating and having the clothes on, he went to the grocery store. There he had some sweets and wine. After having his heart felt, then he wanted to have a sleep. So he slept on the pile of quilts very nearby. But this time he was not able to get up on time. Next morning, when the assistants of that store they came, they noticed him and started approaching him. At that moment, he woke up and got nervous, and out of nervousness, he started running away. Then the assistants of that store, they also started chasing him. He was able to escape only after removing all his new clothes. Once again, he was invisible and naked without any money and in the chill air of January. Now, after being naked once again, without being money once again from that store, now he decided to try the clothing of the theoretical company, as he knew there he would definitely get something to cover his face also. So he quickly reached Drury Lane. Drury Lane is the center of the theoretical world, as he was shivering with cold. So he found a shop where he could find all the things which he needed. He entered that store. When he came out after moving on with the stairs, when he came out from that store, he was wearing bandage around his forehead. He was having a false nose. He was having a side whiskers and was also having a hat on his head. But still, as he was not having money, so to gain some money, to have some money, he attacked that shopkeeper and robbed all the money which the shopkeeper was having. After robbing the shopkeeper, he then decided that the London was overcrowded and he need to move to some silent place. So he decided to go to a small village that was very nearby, and the name of the village was Iping. He took a train and booked 2 rooms in the local inn. The event of a stranger coming and staying at the inn in the winter night was not a normal thing to happen in that village, because normally in the winter season, Iping village was not being visited by any visitors. But the stranger was there, Griffins was there. So everybody now they started talking about it. And also the appearance of Griffin was quite strange. The landlord of the inn where Griffin was staying, Mrs. Halls, she made a lot of effort to be very friendly with Griffin. But every time she wanted to have a conversation with him, she was being told that he did not want to talk. He clearly told her that his reason for coming to Iping was simply for peace and quietness, and he did not wish to be disturbed while he was engaged in doing his work. Also, he told her that because of an accident, his face was affected, and that was the reason why it was all in bandage. The landlord's wife, Mrs. Halls, she accepted that her new guest was a strange scientist and was ready to excuse his temper and habits because he had paid for all those things in advance. Then the time came when his money was over and he had no cash available for further payment at the inn. As now he was not having any money, then he started pretending that he was waiting for a check which could arrive at any moment. After that, something really strange happened. The clergyman and his wife, they were awakened by some noises in their study room. When they were coming downstairs, they could hear the sound of money. Being taken from the clergyman's desk. And that clergyman, he went towards the room. He held a metal rod in his hand and flung the door open. As soon as he opened the door, he shouted, "Surrender!" as he thought he had caught the thief. But to his surprise, when he entered in, he could not see anyone. He started looking under the desk, behind the curtains, and also up the chimney. But the person was not to be seen anywhere. Yet, the desk, it had been opened, and the money which was there in the desk, it was being robbed. Then that clergyman, he kept on saying extraordinary affair the whole day because he was shocked by the incident. But the thing that happened with Mrs. Hall's furniture were much more fascinating than the robbery at the clergyman's house. Mrs. Halls and her husband, they woke up very early and were surprised as the door to the guest room was open. Usually, his room's door it always remained closed and locked because he used to get very angry if anyone ever tried to enter his room. So now it was an opportunity, and so Mrs. Halls did not wanted to miss it. They decided to investigate when they saw that nobody was inside the room and the door was open. When they entered the room, they noticed that his bed sheets were cold. It means that he must have been awake from a little more while. And the bandages which he was applying on his faces, they were lying here and there around the room. Suddenly, Mrs. Halls, she heard a sniff very close to her ear, and Griffin's hat that was lying on the bedpost, it flung towards Mrs. Halls and it hit her face. After that, the chair in the room, it also dashed itself, hitting Mrs. Hall's leg. Now they both got scared. Mrs. Halls and her husband, they were going out of the room when the chair closed the door, and suddenly a sound of slamming the door and locking were heard. Now, this incident, it terrorized Mrs. Hall and Mr. Hall, and she was about to fall down from the stairs. She was now totally convinced that there was some evil spirit in her aunt's room, and the stranger was the person who has caused this incident to happen. Later on, we come to know that she moaned because the chair which hit her was of her mother, and then she thought, how could that chair rise up against her? The neighbors, they also thought that it was because of witchcraft which had caused such a thing to happen. Witchcraft means some magical practice of magic. Now, when the news of the burglary at the clergyman's house it reached other people in the village, everyone they started suspecting the scientist only, the strange scientist. Suspicions it grew so stronger on him that how he produced cash for his payment at the inn, even though few days back he was telling that he was simply waiting for a check to arrive and he was not having a cash in his hand. So the village constable, Mr. Jaffers, was being called, and Mrs. Halls did not want to wait for him, so she went straight to Griffin as he had appeared from the empty bedroom at the inn. She had a question, she threw a question to her. What had he been doing upstairs to her chairs and furniture? She also asked him how did he come out of the empty bedroom or how he entered the locked bedroom. The scientist, he became really angry and started shouting that they didn't understand who or what he was, and then he decided to show them the truth. He slowly started removing all his bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and he removed his nose also. In removing all these things, it took him hardly a minute to do all these things. And then the people present there at the bar, they were horrified because they were now looking at the headless man. Mr. Jaffers, the constable of the village, was also surprised as he saw that he had to arrest a man who was not having head. But still, Jaffers wanted to do his duty as he knew that the magistrate wanted that person to be arrested. So now Griffins, he started taking off all his clothes slowly. As he started removing his clothes slowly, he started getting invisible slowly. And after he was removing his shirt, after he removed his shirt, he was nowhere to be seen. And now Jeffers was struggling to arrest a man who was completely invisible. People who tried helping Jaffer were also struggling, as when they tried to help Jaffer, they were also hit by blows from nowhere. Now, as Jaffer was trying to make his last attempt to catch hold of the invisible man, he was knocked unconscious by some invisible force. Everybody was shouting there, "Hold him, hold him!" But Griffin, he had set himself free from them, and nobody could understand how to catch him. So, dear students, that's all for this lecture. We'll meet again with a new interesting topic. Till then, Jenna and all of you,